Okay, hello everyone, and I know this is going to be an unexpected one, but I have been a Slipknot fan and really a metal fan in general for a very, very long time, and I've been into Slipknot for a long time ever since the Subliminal Verse came out. Right now we're going to be reviewing We Are Not Your Kind. Now this one, I will say, did experiment a little bit, especially with creating a more like creepy type of cinematic type of atmosphere, which I think they did a good job at doing that. And they have 3 track total, which are short little songs to really go in between a couple songs or mainly serve as intermissions or introductions for the album. And Insert Coin is one of these, is the first track in the album, which kind of really hyped up for the next song, and it kind of sounds a bit creepy. Pretty much all these do, especially Death Because Dad. This one really gets people hyped up for the next song, which is Unstained, which combined a few new elements that they made along with some of their old elements, and this song is also a song that I feel like would be on the radio a lot along with the other single on the album. Of course, Slipknot is one of the biggest metal bands of all time, and I haven't really listened to the radio much in general over the past like couple years, so I'm not sure if the song would be on the radio all the time, but I'm guessing it would, since, you know, of course, like I said, Slipknot is one of the biggest metal bands of all time. So I like the aggressive side to this, though, that they put one of their more aggressive songs as one of their singles, because it really makes me think of the old Slipknot days when, of course, Slipknot was a lot more aggressive, and of course they didn't have as much in their arsenal back then as they did now, I think. Though they were still a good band back in the day, they're a good band to listen to if you wanted, like, you know, just to blow off some steam or something like that. Slipknot was a good band to listen to really make that happen. Birth of the Cruel, this song that kind of reminds me of the Subliminal Verses days in a way, especially like when you get into the more aggressive parts of the song. It reminds me of the Subliminal Verses. Pretty much in all ways, it kind of reminds me of that. I feel like they really attempted to make a song that sounded like those days when they were making this song, and I think they did a pretty good job at it, because this song, I think, definitely does kind of fit in with those, and definitely is a pretty good banger. So, and Death Because of Death, definitely the creepiest kind of intermission type of song in this album, which leads into Nero Forte, which is a song that's definitely a bit darker, which kind of fits Death Because of Death along with being that song being before this one. And this one really shows that Corey Taylor definitely does hold those elements that he's proven over the past few albums for sure, that he can go from like the melodic type of choruses he does to the more chorus screaming vocals that he does. He can do those in a really good way. Critical Darling, this is a song that reached over 6 minutes, surprisingly, and this song is a song you could really headbang to, especially as of the verses, which definitely do have a really headbanging type of vibe to them for sure. And the choruses, of course, are more melodic, kind of like some of the other songs they've released over the years, ever since like around the Subliminal Verse, a little bit before, I think. And this song, the main riff of the song, is definitely pretty easy to headbang to, so it definitely is a song that I can get into, especially because it combined those like headbanging type of verses with these kind of more melodic type of choruses, which I really have always enjoyed that Slipknot has done. I think they've done it in a really good way over the years for sure, which is one of the reasons I got in Slipknot before, especially in albums like All Hope Is Gone and the Subliminal Verses. And then there's A Liar's Funeral, which has got to be one of my favorite Slipknot songs of all time, really, because this song starts out like this really nice, kind of sweet sounding intro, which of course has these soft kind of vocals in it, and this whole song in general kind of explains the tensions of the band. It really shows the tensions of the band that have happened over the years, like whether it be in their early years, of course, because of drug and alcohol abuse, or recently where there's been tension with the lineup of the band, really the lawsuits of the band, whatever it may be. Slipknot's been through so much over the years. Like, you can pretty much name anything and they've been through it. So this kind of explains those tensions that have happened within the band over the years. And this is one thing that I've liked about Slipknot, especially over past like over 10 years or so, is the fact they have had the ability to experiment instead of just doing the same thing over and over like some bands like do. Like, of course, I will mention Nickelback, Imagine Dragons. You know, of course they have, Imagine Dragons always haven't done the same thing, but they just became this really generic, formulaic band. But I will talk about them later. I'll go on a rant about them later. But this album really showcased the fact that they could experiment more. Of course, they've experimented in the past with adding these more melodic choruses, but they've experimented in this album with even more things, like adding kind of a more creepy chill type of vibe to it, which I don't think they've done as much in any other album as they have in this album. I think at this point was really the peak of the album, simply because it really ramped up the aggression at this album. Of course, right before was almost one of the slowest parts of the album, and then they really ramped it up to one of the heaviest parts of the album. And of course, the next song, Red Flag, which is another really aggressive type of song, which A Liar's Funeral and Red Flag I would consider the peak of this album for sure. And Red Flag, of course, not as good as A Liar's Funeral as a build-up, but definitely can be a song to headbang to, which of course I do like this song for that. And like I said, this point of the album is pretty much the peak of this album. And of course the next two tracks, What's Next and Spiders, What's Next being really the intermission song to the song Spiders, which is a song, of course you can tell by the title, it's probably going to be a more creepy type of song, considering lots of people think spiders are either creepy or just really scary in general. And this song, of course, added creepy type of elements to it, and they really experimented, added a few more elements that were really new to the band into it, which I enjoyed, of course, and I like that they had a moderately creepy type of vibe to this song. And these next few songs, of course, did have intros. They're about a minute long. Of course, they weren't, separate tracks, but they were within the same track, of course, which I kind of felt like a minute was too long to really add an intro for it, of course, which makes the songs around 6 minutes long, which of course these have a really cinematic type of feel to them, though I feel like it may be a little bit too long that they've really dragged the intros on for. I think they could have done it within like 30 to 45 seconds, but of course they added them for like a minute, which isn't too bad of a thing, really. I just wish they were just a little bit shorter, and then they would have been perfect. And these songs, of course, explain being at your lowest very well, being at lowest point of really your life, which of course the members of this band definitely were at a pretty low point at one time, especially in their early years, of course. And I think these songs really capture those emotions really well. And of course, Not Long for This World, I feel like the intro for that was really the one that dragged on more than any of the other of the three intros of these songs, and this one was really the weakest out of the three 6-minute songs, I think. So we're gonna move on to the next song, Soul Wave Earth, which is a song that kind of reminds me of a Machine Head song in a way. Like the riffage kind of reminds me of a Machine Head song, like Halo, of course. And I thought this song was a decent song to put as a single and as an ender to the album. So all in all, this album definitely was a good album, which showed experimentation a little bit, of course, even more than they've done over the past couple years, which when I first heard Kill Pop for the first time, which is a song in one of the earlier records released around 2014, I remember thinking, wow, Slipknot has really experimented a lot, but this album really showed me that they could experiment even more with each and every album that they do, and they wouldn't want to be the same thing over and over like, some of these other bands are, like Imagine Dragons and Nickelback and bands like that. And I feel like this album really experimented in a good way, which gave a different type of vibe compared to the previous albums, just slightly. And they really showed that they wanted this album to be another unique piece from them. The album is definitely another good, more experimental Slipknot album for sure. And it had like all sorts of different types of songs in them, all sorts of different types of vibes in them combined in with this album. And I thought that was definitely a good thing for them to do on this album. Instead of just making a lot of the songs sound pretty similar, like I feel like one of the earlier records did, one or two of the earlier records did that, I feel like, which was kind of a thing that brought down my my opinion on them a little bit, though I didn't really dislike them necessarily. But this album definitely had a more variety of types of songs on the album, which I did heavily enjoy. I didn't really get bored because I was hearing the same thing over and over again. So this album, of course, did that very well. And I'm going to be giving this album a 4.7 out of 5. Great Slipknot album. I feel like a lot of maggots will enjoy this album. And a lot of metal fans in general will enjoy this album. And I definitely did. And at first, I must add, I couldn't find the song on YouTube or Spotify or anywhere until Slipknot made the playlist of all the songs, linked all the songs in the playlist, and it's up on the YouTube channel now. I'm not sure if it's on Spotify yet. I'd have to go check for that, but I'll link the playlist in the description for anyone who wants to listen to the full album. And yeah, I will see you guys later.